Thank you, great. It's been a quite eventful day. I'm quite thankful for MRTS to get us together and share the insights and wisdom that comes across, from different parts of the world into areas where people are kind of beginning to enter into this digital space. And what a way to actually end it off by really focusing into manufacturing. So I think just to introduce the session, I think it comes at a very right time, especially given the African context. So, I mean, we all know the cross-country, continental connections problems that we have. I mean, we have countries in Africa that have, for example, single ports of entry. There isn't, proper connectivity between countries in terms of movements of goods and all of that. On top of those problems, we now have COVID that kind of ripped all of those apart. So our supply chain bottlenecks are increasing, and then people are asking questions. All of these things are actually taking place during a digital era. The big question in everybody's mind is, how then do we use digital and technology to solve this value chain type of challenges that we're facing in manufacturing? So we've learned that manufacturing is just beyond the scope of just, manufacturing within the plant. It's about considering how then do you actually get a product out to your customers. So we've come to understand that value chain integration is very, very, very important, especially now during COVID-19. So this is just to set the scene in terms of what we can expect today. You can expect people to talk to you about their everyday experience. These are the leaders across different countries from Africa that can share on their insights in terms of how they're handling these issues every day. And the intention is to really make it more African context. It's always good to learn from the outside world, but we always want to bring that back into the context that we experience on a daily basis, so that at the end of the day, we can create the type of businesses that we want. We can have the manufacturing industry that we want, and eventually we can build the sense of Africa that we want. So with that, I'm just gonna ask each of the speakers to just introduce themselves and just give you a little bit about their passion in digital. So I'll start with Manti. Manti, do you wanna just introduce yourself to the audiences?
Yeah. Firstly, thank you so much. I'm really humbled, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be taking part in this summit. My name is Manthisana Mosese, or Manti. I'm former head of IT for Philips Africa. I've got a new role now. I'm the IT business partner, but the scope has increased to include Middle East and Turkey. So my role has mostly been in supporting functions, and manufacturing is a big area of interest because Philips as a manufacturer of hospital modalities. So I need to have an interest in this space as well. Oratile, the other day you were asking what are the things that actually keep you awake at night, and for me, really youth unemployment is one of those things that I toss and turn thinking about that. So it's me.
Great. Prince, do you wanna just take over from this or just tell us about yourself?
All right. My name is Prince. It's truly an honor to be part of this summit. It's actually my first international summit. Yes. In my role, I'm a business advisor at the Botswana Exporters and Manufacturers Association. I'm not sure if my audio is audible. Am I audible?
We can hear you. Yeah, all right. We can hear you quite
Yes.
clearly.
I am a business advisor from the Botswana Exporters and Manufacturers Association. Basically, what I do is advocate and offer consultancy on behalf of the private sector exporters here in Botswana, be it at regional level, national level, international level. So as a business advisor here in the association, I have been privileged to actually represent the whole exporting community here, the manufacturing community here at different platforms. Let's say the government, at the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, be it at regional level. Also, I represent at SACU or SADC, because just recently we were appointed as an association, the private sector reps within the SACU, since our country is actually the head at SACU. As one of my passions, actually, as a youth also, as a youth, one of my passions is tackling the issue of unemployment. Unemployment here in Botswana is actually quite strong. It's very high. So in my passions, I'm not sure if you are aware of the GenU Unlimited, which is a platform intended to tackle youth issues from unemployment, getting youth involved in manufacturing, because there's been this stereotype that if you're a part of manufacturing, you have to wear overalls. It's a nasty job. It's very nasty. But what I intend to do is actually show the youth that manufacturing, it's actually something which is viable. It's actually that one of the most productive factors within our economy, that youth can actually go into that space, create jobs for themselves, and also employ their peers from universities and help curb this plague we call unemployment. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Temi, do you want to also just give us the snippets of your area of expertise and who you are?
Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone. I think it's a great honor to be on this panel. It's a topic that is close to my heart, and I really feel excited to have been invited to share a few thoughts. I think it's also a very great time to be having this conversation, especially for us, on the continent of Africa, knowing that we have a great need, right, to expand our manufacturing footprint, contribute more, right, to the global manufacturing space. And I've heard a lot of talk about unemployment, a lot of talk about youth empowerment. And if you ask me, traveling across Africa, I think that one of those sectors that can really, power the kind of change that we want to see is in manufacturing. We're fortunate to also be at a time where there are a number of technological enablers that if we plan and position ourselves strategically enough, we will be able to, leverage to deliver the kind of growth that we are, looking forward to in that sector.
Great. Thank you. I think just to get into the first set of discussions, every time I get to speak in digital or manufacturing conferences, I get confronted by the realities that we face as African countries. I can tell you as a fact that most African countries today are importing toothpicks, and we're supposed to be manufacturing things like that. And over and above that, we're here today to talk about technology to change some of this context. How then do we, for an example, come up with technologies to create this new manufacturing expertise, bring us to a point where we can be able to manufacture expertise toothpicks with ease and compete at an international level. And when you talk about this, creating the smart factories, there's a lot of drivers that are driving these things that some of us or some of the audiences haven't even seen. I mean, we're talking, Industry 4.0, we're talking additive manufacturing, we're talking advanced analytics, we're talking robotics, we're talking many, many things. And in my experience across the African continent, we have pockets of excellence across all of these domains, but we also have very persistent, complex problems. And the question to the panel is, what has been your experience in this space in terms of, moving along this journey of, creating smart factories within your space, and what has been the challenges? I'm not sure if Manti, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can. So Oratile, for me, what I've seen is that the whole concept of smart factories is being driven by multinationals, and I'm speaking in the context of South Africa. A lot of manufacturing companies in South Africa are really struggling to get on board with automating some of their manufacturing factories. So it's driven by these multinationals, and even then, I mean, the different companies have different automation roadmaps within these multinationals, and they're all at different stages. So you find, majority of them are now using RPA. So bots have become very, pervasive. They've become cheap to produce and implement. So a lot of them are using bots. Cloud technology has taken up really nicely in this particular space. And then, so there's a lot going on. There's been the whole move to integrate the ERP systems with the manufacturing systems. A lot of companies are now starting to get their head around big data analytics and dashboarding and providing, real-time KPIs. So although, it's in pockets, as you said, a lot of companies are starting to move towards it in South Africa. I had a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and she was telling me that her company is actually closing down a particular factory. This is, of course, the impact of COVID-19, but also they can't see beyond the cost factors, and so they're struggling to keep afloat, and then you are telling them to, or we're talking about 4IR and automation. So they really simply can't see beyond that. So it's very difficult for companies to calculate their ROIs. However, they do realize the importance of automation. She was giving me an example that she's in a company that produces car parts or automotive parts. It takes their factory, the one that's closing down, 28 days to produce a pallet of 300 parts, whereas for China, it takes them 28 days. 7 days, and including the shipping, it's still a shorter period of time to produce that than doing it in South Africa. So the importance of automating and moving along this 4IR journey is being seen. But I just think that companies are struggling to find their way and find their footing and see how they can get on this journey.
Yep. I think, Tanya, and I think one of the things that Manthi is talking about is, the importance of automation, the importance of being quite efficient. But we also do realize that there are some of the stumbling blocks that we experience when it comes to, automating, especially business processes. In some instances, you automate, and then you need to find new areas for people to work because they are not needed here, they needed somewhere else, they need to apply themselves differently. So we have a lot of positives that comes with automation. But what has been your experience in terms of what then do you do with once you've automated to reskill, upskill, and ensure that you can still be able to be effective in what you do?
All right, I think thanks a lot for that question, and I like the way Manthi started it, more like segmenting the manufacturing footprint in Africa between the multinationals and, of course, I would say the local businesses that are also trying to thrive and survive out there. I think it's a very good way to look at it because things don't apply exactly the same way, right, to those two groups, right? So for me, I think the Industry 4.0 comes with quite a number of variety in terms of the opportunities. And if we are too fixated on automation as just one element of it, we might just lose where we have maybe a competitive advantage as far as Africa is concerned. First, we must understand where we are in the scope of things, right? We're contributing only about 3% to global manufacturing today. And that number has not moved in 30, 25 years. One of the reasons is just from the examples that Manthi gave is also about competitiveness. So this is competitiveness of the end-to-end supply chain, right? And then competitiveness within the production system itself, right? And if these are our challenges, then what can we leverage there are a number of room for analytics, which is what really unlocks our competitive advantage within Africa. We have a lot of cheap labor. We can go into the debate of should we automate processes or manually control that. We can go into that debate. And typically you will always find that the business case don't meet, right? The business case don't add up. And so we might be left with a lot of semi-automation options in Africa, which is viable. We might be left with a lot of manual operation, which is fine. But what is important for me is that being able to, mine data from all of this process and then analyze those data to understand where we have efficiency challenges and being able to use that big data element to solve those problems. And we can do that without essentially, investing very hugely into big technologies. But we must start upskilling the people and on showing them the power of data and start getting people to love to mine those data, to love to understand them, to love to use them. If we start at that, it's probably a better way or a more viable way to approach it, considering cost and all of those other constraints that we've got.
Great, that's actually very powerful. And just to add there, one of the things I've learned in this industry, especially from a digital standpoint, is that you should start first by focusing on the problem at hand and the business value associated with that, and not necessarily just the need to automate or getting a nice piece of technology and try to force feed it into your context. I found it to be a lot more effective to kind of focus on what the pain point is, what the problem is, and then working backwards and saying, okay, how then do I solve this? And not the other way around and say, I've got a blockchain, can I implement a blockchain in my organization? You may not need it. As great as it is, is it important to you? To change gears, Prince, I think one of the things that we've seen, especially with this emergence of massive technologies, is emerging new customer behaviors. I mean, just to give an example, our customers that sit in Africa don't necessarily have to order from us. They can use e-commerce systems to order products from abroad. So that's a new behavior, right? So then it forces you to compete with whoever is selling these products into your region. And that forces you to be international competitive. So we don't have what I call a geographical power anymore. So it doesn't mean if you're in a certain region, because of your geography, your market is actually protected. So the e-commerce and the emergence of technologies ripped all of that apart. And with that came new, customer behaviors. The question then is, how then do we use the very same pieces of technologies and insights and way of digitizing to actually try and still be competitive, keep these customers, make them happy? In summary, like this concept of being obsessed with what your customers want and making sure you can actually deliver services and goods to them the way they want you to deliver it to them. Do you want to share, just some of your thoughts in this context of, customer experience, digitalization? How do we digitally lock our customers into our value chain?
All right. Speaking of e-commerce, as you know, last year the pandemic actually broke out for the first time here in Africa. We could feel the impacts of the pandemic and all. Here in Botswana, what actually was the case was that we had to go into a nationwide lockdown. Companies couldn't operate. They actually had to cut down on staff, complement and all. But as an association, what we had noted a gap. So we tried to move into that space, the e-commerce space. We came up with a product. We call it 𝐏𝐫𝐨𝐝 Stores. It's an e-commerce platform, www.𝐏𝐫𝐴_stores.com. It's an e-commerce platform. So through these platforms, we found that, okay, manufacturers here, they actually can now have that one-on-one customer interaction. So what they can do is actually start up their own store within the e-commerce platform, actually get to see customer trends, who are the customers, where are the customers located, what are the customer preferences, because they actually showcase your product. You interact with the customers, they give you advisory in terms of what they want in terms of the product. So as this platform grew, just the beginning of this year, we actually analyze, okay, there's actually a market out there for our local products, because these guys, someone selling actually German print, German print, the type you wear in weddings and all. You'd find most of our manufacturers here in Botswana like getting orders from as far as the Norway, from as far as the UK. So there was actually potential in that space. But now the question, the most pertinent question was, as that business grows, will they be able to keep up with the market? Will they be able to keep up with the market? Let's say if a customer or someone requires, let's say, 5,000 units of a certain product in Norway, will they be able to keep up with demand? Now that's where automation comes in, because now the issue of automation now is to enhance efficiency, make sure, okay, they'll be able to produce these units, and will these units be up to the right quality standards and all? Because we have all these existing multilateral agreements. You have your SACU plus Mozambique, UK EPAs, offering opportunities ranging from products such as the jewelry and all. You have your AGOA, your African Growth and Opportunity Act. You have the much talked about African Free Continental Trade Agreement. I had noted earlier on when Mr. Oratile was opening the introduction, was opening the panel floor, he had talked about the fact that, okay, now we have food, we have a high import bill. It's okay. It's something which is actually not, no, it's a problem here in Botswana, but actually seeing that it's a problem across other African countries, it's an issue because we are Africa, we are supposed to be the breadbasket of the whole world. So now actually, okay, we are supposed to be looking into the fact that now can we expand? Can we expand? How do you do that? We bring automation into the mix, because I don't know if it was Mr. Temitope. You had talked about the issue of automation and cheap labor. I don't know. I do not concur with the statement on the program. Okay, we have cheap labor. Now it's an arguable it's an arguable thing, because okay, you have cheap labor, but how in terms of capacity? Because capacity is an issue here. Now you're looking at a worldwide market. You're no longer looking at just Africa alone or a certain country. Automation, even though we as Africa, we in Africa, we don't have more like let's say a commercial history like spanning over 1,000 years. Hence, this automation topic, it's difficult. It's difficult to implement, because looking at countries such as China, US, it's easy for them because they have this commercial history spanning over 1,000 years. So this automation thing, it's easy for them. But as for us, it's a difficult subject. But I feel automation, we have to take it seriously. Manufacturers here, they don't have the financial means, like how we define your middle scale enterprises, your large scale enterprises. They don't have the financial means, so we have to explore areas such as joint venture partnerships. Will they be able to have coalesce with, let's say, a German company? Were they able to coalesce with an American company? Try see if they can invest in terms of in automation. I know we cannot do it alone. It's high time we look at these other avenues.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot for that, Prince. I like the thoughts on and I'm quite passionate about the topic automation versus labor and all of that, because it reminds me of how we lost the textile industry. The reason why Africa as a whole lost the textile industry to the Asian market was because of higher cost of production and higher cost of manufacturing. But that's a topic for another day. I think Temi and Manti, and it takes me back to what Temi has said earlier on and talked about the devastating numbers that we've seen for the past 30 years within the manufacturing space. And given all of that, and every time as well, if I interact with my colleagues across the manufacturing sector, they tell me about companies closing down. They're telling me about numbers going down. They're telling me about demand dwindling. They're telling me about COVID has made things worse. And then I get this picture in my head and ask this question of given all of these challenges, given all of this non-promising, macro economic context, how do we use Industry 4.0 within the manufacturing context to actually generate value? What has been your, in your immediate space of operation, what has been your sense of growth within the manufacturing sector, and how technology has played a role in that? Is that the case? Have you seen growth? Have you seen technology helping you? If not, why not? What is your perspective?
Yeah. So, I work in a health technology space, and there's been great value generated through technology. For instance, if you have put, say, for instance, a device in a hospital, given the kind of business that a hospital is about, you want that device to have 100% uptime. Well, maybe not 100%, but close to 100% as possible. And this is where technology has come into play. So through smart sensors, you're able to monitor the performance of that particular device. Some hospitals are very busy. When you look at government hospitals or academic hospitals, their machines are running almost at capacity. They cannot afford to have a downtime of a machine. And this is where then those smart sensors would come into play, where critical KPIs are monitored on that particular device, and then the data sent for analytics, and then giving insights in terms of, okay, what's about to break on that particular device, and how can we proactively ensure that that device does not go down? How can we proactively resolve whatever it is that's about to go wrong? So in this particular space, and I know in many spaces as well, this is what technology is able to do. And for me, I quite liked what you said, Oratile, as well, in terms of we really need to start with the problem, and then introduce technology to actually address the problem of the customer. By understanding exactly what our industries are about and the problems that we're trying to solve in these particular industries, this is where we are then able to develop the correct technologies to be able to address those problems. Gone are the days where companies are just developing products for the sake of developing products and pushing them out there in the market and trying to sell them. These days we need to be engaging our customers, finding out what their problems are, and then using technology as an enabler to resolving those particular problems.
Great, thanks a lot. Temi, do you wanna also share your perspective in terms of?
Yeah, I'll just add. Oh, go ahead.
No. I was just asking if you could share, some of your perspective in terms of your experience around growth and how technology has contributed to this growth. Do you believe it's working? If it's not, why not?
Yeah, I think the part that is very clear is the fact that technology has made the market more or less a global one. And gone are the days where you use the size of your population to determine, what you should be producing or what you should not. Yeah. And if we are not forcefully pushing into the export market, what will happen is that, it's already happening where the same product, I work in the consumer goods space, FMCG, and you would see that in almost all the divisions, you would have product from Asia coming into the market. And no matter how hard your government, pushes back, it's gonna happen, because that's the way the world is going. And so rather than seeing ourselves as victims of, the trend, we should rather take advantage of it. And so the technology has expanded the market, I would say. And it means that we can all play in any area, any aspect of, of human lives, right? The other bit is, if we do not if we do not understand what the global market is demanding, which is cost competitiveness, quality, product, and we don't, beef up our capability to deliver to that, what we're going to see is that factories will continue to close down, one after the other. And this is not unique to Africa. It's happened in the United States. It's happened in Europe, Asia, South Asia, North Asia, Southeast Asia has kind of, zapped almost a chunk of global manufacturing footprint. But we can reverse that. And technology can help us in that area. Smart automation, I mentioned the debate of, automation versus manual labor and all of that. That's a topic for another day. But we must begin to look at smarter ways, smarter approaches. Cobot, where machine and man can interact effectively. If you ask, I've worked in manufacturing setups, in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, and I can tell you that depending on who you ask, right, how has automation landed, right, you get different answers. If you ask the consultant who is making you do it, he says something else. If you ask, I've been a plant manager, if you ask me, I have a different story to tell. And so how do we focus on making human and machine interaction using cobot, AGVs? And we are at the maturity stage now globally where there are cheaper alternatives, right? You can put in a cobot arm with $5,000 today versus trying to automate your entire end of line, which are some of those projects that we are never able to justify, right? The second thing is one area which is analytics that we are not exploring that we need to start to preach as leaders within this industry is that at the end of the day, it's going to come down to competitiveness. It's going to come down to how much can you produce within this little time, right? And where all of the infrastructure we are building now, what is going to enable is our ability to mine those data and interpret it to help us understand where the losses are. And I tell you, from my experience within Africa, you do not essentially need to build huge expensive infrastructure to be able to get those data where you need them. There are sensors that are as low as $10 that you can, install at strategic places that can give you, information around temperature, pressure, counts, height, and you can put all of this together to help, in your maintenance and to boost, in-house productivity itself. These are, the areas that I see the opportunity, understanding the constraints in Africa. I don't want to dwell too much about, what the constraints are. I think we all know it, but we must be smart enough to pick what works for us and pitch it all together to be able to deliver where we need it.
Great. Yeah, I think this is quite interesting. Manti talks about how technology is helping them in her space to actually save lives. And then we come to you, Temi, you tell us it's actually not necessarily the technology itself, it's us. What is it that we do with the technology that we have? Things are changing. We have decisions to make. Do we, what do we do? It looks like the question that I'm asking, in fact, may be a wrong question. That is technology helping us? Then the question should be, are we using the technology in a right way to actually advance us forward? What opportunities do we see? And how can technology help us, explore those opportunities? That's actually powerful. So, Prince, what has been your experience in this space in Botswana? Is there a sense of growth? Is there a sense of recognition that technology can take us somewhere? And has it proved that it can take us somewhere? Are the people, kind of celebrating this new, technological emergence? Are they using it in the right way? What's happening in that space? You are mute, Prince. Sorry.
All right. The issue of technology in Botswana, I wouldn't say it's, okay, within the business community, it's well accepted, but as for the general masses, because, technology is viewed as this evil coming to replace jobs and all. But I don't know, I feel it should be viewed in the context that it's not necessarily replacing jobs, but it's creating a different sort of jobs, where now you're talking about issues around management, but looking at the whole business culture here in Botswana, like I've already stated, we have your medium-scale companies your medium scale, your large scale manufacturing companies, your small scale manufacturing companies. Technology mostly, if you look at these separate dividends, it's mostly accepted within or implemented within the large scale manufacturing. Excuse me. It's mostly accepted within the large scale manufacturing division. I had the pleasure of visiting a certain factory, I think it was 2 weeks ago. I could actually see the whole process. They actually make pipes, different types of pipes, your PVCs, your polyvinyl chloride, in terms of pipes and all these other manufacturing components. So I never thought I would see a manufacturing plant like this here in Botswana, because what it does, it actually tests the what do you call the machines that they test. Okay, this is the diameter of the pipe. This is the market. So this market requires this pipe to be this size. It actually tests. This is the actual size of it. And in terms of quality, is this really the type of quality which should be required, let's say, by the US market under the African Growth and Opportunity Act? So you'd see actually you as a person, you could actually bend this pipe and see, when you bend a pipe, it actually has something which is plastic. It has a white line, right, at the way it bends. So with the product, it goes through this machine, right? With the product, if you bend it, it goes back to the original size. It does not have that white line. So actually, looking at the way they've used machines, they actually reach this quality level, which now puts them in a more competitive space. So what we are doing right now as an association is trying to push this whole mandate. Okay, this automation topic, we could move gradually into it. If it's accepted, widely accepted, we're going to see issues such as product quality being addressed, issues such as capacity being addressed. Because for now, the main concern within Africa also and Botswana also is the fact that, okay, we have all these manufacturing companies, but the way you always define manufacturing, if we call ourselves a large scale company, you'd find in the UK, a large scale company, they could probably define it as an entity which has over 1,000 workers. And here in Africa or Botswana, we could define it as an entity which has probably 400 workers. So you see, in terms of those definitions, we are different. In terms of those definitions, we are totally different. So what we could do is probably assimilate this automation topic, assimilate automation into this whole debate, allow us to compete also with those entities, see growth in terms of that space, see more capacity, see more value in terms of products, see product quality rising, seeing us dominating spaces such as that, because I believe we have all these multilateral agreements. And honestly, our participation in those, in terms of not only Botswana, where I believe the whole all of Africa, in terms of those multilateral agreements, we haven't been able to tap into them because of these small particular reasons, your product quality, your capacity, and all. So I feel we should really embrace the automation talk, see how we can strategize around it, because I don't think there's been that actual strategy of how we can actually embrace automation and have probably a framework or guideline showing how we are actually going to move into the space.
Digital conference. Hope I'm still online and available. Okay, am I audible? Great, thank you. Yeah, I just want to move to change gears a bit and move to the topic that is very close to my heart, that I've actually breadth of African context investigating this and also taking some inputs from the global communities. This the issue of skill and development. I mean, I think all of us can recognize that the emergence of new technologies demand us to be producing new sets of skills. So it means life cannot, go on as it is. And what I've experienced, especially across multiple African countries, I've experienced this fragmentation that exists between educational institutions and the business world. And from a theoretical and conceptual standpoint, the students that come out of universities should actually be pushed into business. So it means business are actually customers for universities. So business must be telling universities what to produce. That's how it works in a normal business setup. I'm your customer. I tell you what I want from you. So businesses must be in a position to tell training institutions, to tell educational institutions what they should produce. And I find that that link does not necessarily exist. There's pockets of excellence where there's that engagement, there's a very strong sense of collaboration across public, private, educational sense. But if I go globally, I see at a global level, the likes of Amazon are actually demanding those skills from universities. In fact, universities, when they set up their curriculums, will bring in the private sector and say, what do you want us to produce? And then the question is, coming back to Africa, how do we continue to foster collaboration? How do we ensure that we develop the new skills that are necessary to take us forward? Because without these skills, the future remains bleak. It means we have to import the skills, right? And when you're in a situation where you're importing skills, there's a problem. Yeah, that's a problem, because once you import your skills, your cost of manufacturing goes high overnight. The question is, what has been your experience in terms of skill development? Where are we across different countries, and what ideas can you share with the leaders that are listening to us today? I'm not sure, Manthi, do you want to go first?
Yeah, okay. Let me go, because I recently heard about South Korea's Master schools, and it talks directly to the point you just made now, where there is that collaboration between the school and industry, where they collaborate to actually create curricula that develop the skills that industry is looking for. And in our context, I mean, there's been a lot of talk, especially, from a South African perspective, around how the education system needs to change. The president commissioned a 4IR commission in 2019. And one of the outcomes of that is that there needs to be, the investment in human capital development, and we just haven't seen, any visible product or progress, from the ground up. And this is exactly the kind of thing that we need. I mean, universities don't operate in a vacuum. They're part of an ecosystem, and that ecosystem also includes government. How do we make sure that we include the stakeholders, all the stakeholders, government, universities, private sector, into saying what are these skills that we are looking for as private sector. This is where we are, in terms of moving towards smart factories, for instance, in manufacturing. And for us to move from this level to that level, these are the kinds of skills that we're looking for, and working together to develop that particular curricula. Or curriculum to make sure that the skills that private companies require, or even companies in general require, is being produced by universities. So and we've got technical colleges, also in South Africa, but there's also what can I say? There's a misconception in terms of these technical colleges, where if you come from a university versus coming from a technical college, you are more superior. You've got a superior level of education than you did in a technical college. That's just what's happening in South Africa, and we need to be able to change those kinds of mindsets, because we need students that come out of university, even with a little bit of experience, to be able to be absorbed into the business world, to take this fourth industrial revolution forward.
Great. Thanks for that. Temi, I mean, Nigeria is a highly entrepreneurial country. What has been your experience from skill development standpoint there? I mean, how you producing these entrepreneurs? How are they playing within this manufacturing, and are they able to source skills? How are they sourcing skills? How are they developing the skills?
I think it's a very, very vital angle, to this conversation. And we must salute the sheer resilience of the African youth. I think that we people have learned to kind of take care of themselves, right, in that regard. Yeah. And there is a lot of self-study, self-development that is happening. We can't ignore it. I look at Nigeria, I look at Kenya, and I see a lot of that also in South Africa. People are picking up these skills, whether it's cloud computing, whether it's data analytics, whether it's robotics and automation. People are going, that's one of the advantages of the internet as well. People are just creating their own universities by themselves, studying and graduating themselves, if you get what I mean. And the quality of the skills that are being developed are global, and that is creating another problem. So because these things are not institutionalized, as it were, it's not producing the critical mass that is required. But the quality of the skills is so high that even those who are now self-trained get to be picked outside to work outside of Africa. And so we are not even able to retain, those talents that we are developing. But I think that we must start to look beyond policy making, because if I look at government and policy makers, they are still within the talking stages, right? Where the need is there, everybody talks about it, but there are no critical actions. But organizations need to start taking these up upon themselves, developing the pipeline, of talent that they will require, right? And this has to be deliberate. In Unilever, for example, we're creating global citizen data scientists as a program for everybody, right? Rather than, it's cheaper to breed this talent from within the organization than to try to buy them. And so that becomes the template. Now we must continue to advocate, right? Every serious organization should already have a skill development roadmap. I'll be surprised that if you are not already doing that, you're 20 years, behind, and pay a lot of attention and resources behind these programs. Will this still be enough? No, right? We need to get the government engaged. We need the industry to speak to the university system. But for me, I would not spend too much of my energy, because this has been a recurring conversation that is not changing. So what can we do in our space to really change the situation, right?
Yeah, great. In my assessment and involvement in this space, I think there's really two countries we can learn from, and Nigeria is one of those two. But I've experienced India to be quite exceptional at producing, tech type skills in terms of, data science, in terms of automation, programming, software development. I think we need to get in India and actually ask them the hard-hitting questions. How did you get this right? And I think there's a lot to learn. And Prince, maybe to bring you in, from a traditional sense, in terms of some of the pieces of work I've done in Botswana, I've actually come to learn that the way Botswana used to develop skills traditionally is to send graduates abroad and try to acquire those skills from abroad and bring them in. But that's like back in the time. I'm not sure if there is still, even in the context of Industry 4.0, if there is still way of producing the skills. Has there been any shifts? How are the skills development there? Are you still relying on an old model of sending graduates and bringing them in to come and uplift the country? Or, any perspectives there?
The same model is still in place, but we've seen it's not working for the country, because those same graduates, they decide to stay where they are because they're highly skilled and all. But what we've seen just recently, the academia is actually now starting to approach the business world. Because one time I had actually asked one of the local universities here when the last time they updated that curriculum was. It was said to hear that it was in 2002. So you'd wonder how relevant are these skills? How relevant are these skills? But of recent, as an association, we are approached by the University of Botswana to actually chair one of the committees within their faculty. There. So basically what we do is going to offer more of advice, what is required here within the business world, how can we advise the curriculum revision and all, and in terms of skills, how can we place students into these different companies so they actually acquire the skills, because we have what you call special economic zones. So special economic zones, the way it works is that you have different designated areas within the country reserved for a special certain economic activity. So we have the finance parks, we have the horticulture, we have all these other manufacturing avenues. So what we are currently doing right now is try to see, okay, what are the skills which are going to be required in these different areas? How can we make sure that the graduates are actually skilled? So what we are doing right now, we are working with the Human Resource Development Council, which we call the HRDC. Like I think Manthisana was alluded to. She did mention a very valuable point. Like we have to change the way we view the vocational and these technical colleges, training centers. Well, they actually harbor this tremendous potential of contributing to, let's say, these special economic zones, the manufacturing areas. So what we could actually do is see ways now, okay, how we can better shape these curriculums within the vocational training colleges, because here currently the training is a bit basic. When they finish, you find now they contribute to the unemployment statistics. So those are actually the basis of trying to see mapping the relevance in terms of the special economic zones, seeing how they can actually be of best fit. So what we are doing, since we have manufacturing companies within our membership, we represent probably 3/5 of the whole manufacturing space here in Botswana. We are trying to get companies involved, see how they can best advise in terms of this area. What skills do they require? Instead of saying, okay, we have Botswana graduates, they're not of best quality. Now you're getting someone from outside. You have to compete now with international remuneration and all. So it's now expensive for you as a company. Why not help us solve this? Because we are basically helping you in essence. Now we are helping the local academia. The cost implication on your company is going to reflect in that area. So I feel it's very crucial now to have the manufacturing community now see it in that angle, actually helping themselves by doing that. So local academia, there is that need to invest in local academia.
Yeah, no, great. I think just to wrap up this session before we close, and maybe just to share sentiment, especially on the skills in the manufacturing sector in South Africa, I can say with confidence that if you can employ an experienced data science in the space of 3 months in the manufacturing space in South Africa, you are very lucky. And I see that getting worse, given that we have now this work from home and remote type of work. So now we are about to compete for a small piece of experienced data science with multinationals, because they can now serve other companies abroad while they're in South Africa. So I think there's a very strong need to actually develop a lot of the skills. But I mean, the finance sector in South Africa has been very dominant in terms of actually, reserving all of the skills for themselves, and they've done well to keep those skills. But guys, we have 2 minutes left, and in closing, I'm just going to ask every one of you just 30 seconds, at most a minute, parting words in terms of what message do you want to leave with the audiences. And it will even be better, if those messages and parting words can take, COVID into context, because COVID is part of us, and we need to live in this new world in terms of, manufacturing industry and all of that. So maybe Manti, let me start with you again. You mute.
Going to COVID, sorry, what COVID has really exposed is that we are heavily reliant on China. And when COVID hit and there were backlogs, we needed to accelerate the process of automation on our side, from a manufacturing perspective. However, my parting shots are that the transformation to Industry 4.0 is a collaborative process. So we need to be deliberate. So industry needs to be deliberate in working with government and other stakeholders to get ourselves to where we need to be. And we shouldn't be scared of making laws and policies will benefit us. We should be getting to that point where we rely on ourselves and each other. We don't have to rely on importing certain products that we can make ourselves. But yes, we need to be deliberate in making sure that we do this and get to where we need to go to.
Great, thank you. Temi, do you want to parting words?
Yeah, I'll just say that COVID is just one of those disruptions that we would have to deal with. It's not over. There may be more, and so we must just keep building our resilience. Technology is now an enabler, and we must plan and be deliberate about how we apply it to solve our problems. The market is now global. We must craft our own chunk and play in such a way that we're competitive to compete with any other person, any other section of the world. Yep, that's how I would love to close.
Great, thank you. Prince, short and sweet, we're out of time.
All right, am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to say the way we view the pandemic, honestly, I feel that we should imagine a world, let's say, living with the pandemic or something post the pandemic, because if we view normalcy, like trying to dwell on this normalcy, going back to normalcy, we're going to get stuck. So what we basically should do is embrace this. I believe now there's certain policy revisions are happening across all boards, be it from a finance perspective, an industry perspective, your trade perspective. So what the business community should basically do in essence is actually try collaborate with the public sector, have those public-private sector synergies, see how you can work with the government sector in order to map a way forward around this pandemic, because we cannot rely on the government, honestly. We cannot depend on the government to work separately in silos to find a solution for the private sector, while we on the other side have the means of actually partaking in terms of finding amicable solutions. So I feel that also with the e-commerce, the advent of the e-commerce, seeing it actually booming now in Africa, there is tremendous potential there. The traditional means of doing business has actually shifted. You see more sales happening within e-commerce platforms. So it's important to shift towards those years. I think I've run out of time.
Yeah, thanks, great. Thanks for all the extinguished guest speakers, and thanks for listeners to be joining us in today. And we're hopeful that we can see you again in the next session. I think we'll probably have another session next year, but I think the organizers will take it from there, and you will be kept informed. With that, I close. Thank you. Enjoy your day further. Have a fantastic time.